Let me see if anybody is on.
Can I see that, Wendy? I don't know that I can see.
Well,
Can only you see that?
so far I'm not seeing anything. So
Okay.
I
Hello. We could just start.
we'll just I'll wait about
We
2
could
or
do,
3 minutes. I'll
that's
wait
what I
2
do, 2 or
minutes.
3 minutes. I find that, you know what's happening now? People are busier than they were because they're out and
Yeah.
about because of the shots.
Mhm.
My people show up like early, but now they're showing up
Oh,
late because I think people are out.
yeah.
It's great. I think people are actually living their lives again.
Right. All right. We're live now, but we'll wait a minute or two.
Sure.
I'm going to have this edited afterwards. I'll just edit this
Fine.
part out.
No problem.
All right.
No problem. Where are you, Wendy? You're in New York?
Connecticut.
Connecticut. Okay.
Yeah, about an hour and a half, an hour and 15 from
Yeah.
New
Is
York
it getting
City.
nice up there? Is it pretty?
It's
Is it pretty?
lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just sense that people like today is a spectacular day. I've already been out for 2 walks.
Hmm.
It's so spectacular that
Yeah.
you can't, after being locked up for so long,
I know.
you can't resist
Yeah.
going out there.
Yeah. Wait, somebody commented. Maybe that's Barbara. Let me see.
No, I don't
Oh,
see
I do have a
anything.
few people on.
Let's see. Oh, I see some. I see Barbara.
see.
Cool. We're arriving, right? Margot from
Okay.
Phoenix. Cool.
All right. I don't know. I had a bunch of other people tell me they were coming on. I don't know where they are.
There you go. There you go.
All right. What do you have a time? Because I shut my phone off. I don't know.
It's 2:02, but I'm in Central Time, so it's probably
Oh,
3:02 your
all
time.
right. We'll wait another minute.
Sure. Hello. There's a couple of people there. Margot.
Yeah.
Thriving at 50 plus. Cool. I just feel like we're going to have such a great spring into summer. I'm so looking forward to it. I just have such optimism after being so depressed for so long.
Oh, yeah.
You
I
feel
know.
optimistic and excited and
Well, I unfortunately got a herniated disc.
oh no.
So, but
Oh boy.
yeah, so it's been limiting, but I can't wait for it to get better, and then I'll be very excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I look back and I think, how did we do that? How did we stay in our houses for 3 months? It's pretty crazy. But we did.
Well, I stayed in for basically a year.
Did you? You really didn't come out at all?
I went out just to take a walk. That's what
Yeah. I did that for 3 months. And then I got out. We ate outside.
Yeah.
We have nice weather down here, so that was helpful.
Yeah.
But difficult.
Well, I think we should probably start, and people will hopefully trickle in.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to Renewal at 50 plus. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. And I'm so glad for the people who are here live, and welcome to those watching afterwards. And this is my second Renewal at 50 plus, and I'm really excited about it. Renewal at 50 plus is a monthly show where I interview a special guest each month. And it's a wake-up call to wake up your potential, to live your best life, have your best career at 50 plus. And each month I'll be talking to a special guest on just that. Before I introduce today's guest, I just want to say something about reinvention. We're going to be talking today about reinventing and branding yourself to have a thriving next act in career. And I want to share something that I talk about in my book, Thriving at 50 Plus. It comes from a Seinfeld episode where George Costanza says to Jerry, and George has just lost his job, well, maybe I'll be a talk show host. I just love to chat. I love to talk. Or maybe I'll be a movie projectionist. I love to watch movies. Well, of course, that is the extreme in terms of reinvention. But it also underscores a misperception that people often have. They think that reinvention, you just slap your hands and you reinvent yourself. And as we'll discuss today, it's a lot more complicated than that. And I know we'll get into some of the nuances with today's special guest, Lesley Jane Seymour. Lesley Seymour has had a storied career. She's been editor-in-chief of 4 national women's magazines, and as part of her own career journey, has made herself into a reinvention expert. Mm-hmm. She also has a super podcast called Reinvent Yourself with Lesley Jane Seymour. I urge you to check it out. She's the founder and CEO of CoveyClub.com, which is a community for women 50 plus looking to reinvent themselves. And she's a super speaker. So I'm just delighted and honored to have Lesley as my special guest today. Welcome, Lesley.
Great to be here, as always.
Lesley, I thought that we would start by your sharing about the first time you lost your job, in this case for Marie Claire. And I know you've had a very accomplished career, but like most of us, you've had some job losses. So if you could talk about that and how you felt and what happened.
Well, actually, that wasn't the first job loss. I lost a job when I was just starting out in newspapers, which moved me to magazines. I didn't even want to go to magazines. I thought magazines were too slow, too boring. I liked the pace of newspapers, which was very much like digital. Every day you're pumping something out. And I went to the Daily News when Clay Felker, who was a very famous editor from New York Magazine. I had been working at Women's Wear Daily. He was sort of scooping up all the best writers in the city. And they actually offered a paying wage. And I didn't even know what they were hiring for. They could have made me I could have been the obit person. I took the job and then I asked what it was when they told me I was making $14,000 and they were offering like 18 or something. And I was like, fine, I'll take it. And then I went back to my office and the girl who'd sent me there, she goes, what is the job? I'm like, I don't know. But I'm going to actually be able to feed myself, which was amazing. And then the second time I lost it was Marie Claire. And that was really my dream job. And I was caught between the partnership with the company that owned Marie Claire. It was a one-off. It was actually owned by their rival and in partnership with the French company that invented Marie Claire. So their rival owned something like, I want to say 70% of the magazines. The only one they didn't own was the American version. And the weird thing was the American version made all the money. The American version had access to celebrities because we were here in the States. It sold the most because a lot of the European countries and around the world, they sell tiny, tiny amounts. So what I didn't know was the structure behind the scenes. I just knew the product and I was in love with the product. Back then, Marie Claire was not only fashion and beauty, but it really did so much women's rights work. I mean, just incredible stories from around the world, opening your eyes to women's issues and how different the world was for women worldwide. And I just spoke to me. And even though I love fashion beauty, there's nothing I love more. I love a good lipstick. I love whatever, but I really love helping women find themselves and find their voices and make them have a better life. And so I was like the monkey in the middle between two companies. One, the French company wanted to go way, way, way upscale and compete with Vogue. and the company that I worked for wanted to stay way downscale and didn't want to invest anything because they only owned one. So, and I think what they thought in their future was that eventually they would sell that off to the other company. So they were never going to invest in it. Instead, they would invest in the products that they owned. But I was too young. I was so young. I didn't understand the backbeat. And it was great. It got me to where I wanted to be, which was I was a Francophile. I lived in France as a junior abroad in college. I'd studied French. I spoke fluent French. So I got what I wanted, which was I was in Paris at least once a month. And right outside the window of the office was the view of the Eiffel Tower. I was like, hey, I made it. And but what I didn't know was all the orchestration of the way the companies were working together, and they had competing interests, and what happens when you have, and what I didn't know either, which is so interesting and is something for anybody going into any kind of partnership needs to know, which I did not know at that age. I was so young, was check out the partnership. Like if it's a 50-50 partnership between two brands, you don't want to be the monkey in the middle. And that means somebody has not decided who's in charge here. And that it has to be 51-49, but I didn't know that. I didn't know any of this stuff. I didn't even know the structure. I just knew I loved the product. And so what happens is when they haven't worked out who's in charge, and you've got one wants to go upscale and one wants to go downscale and one wants to spend money and the others want to spend it, the person who runs it, you're stuck in the middle. And what's going to happen? They can't fight with each other. So the way I explain it is, they fight through you, and then they both shoot you, and then they get together over the dead body as they bury it. They go, oh, isn't that too bad? She didn't get it. She didn't. And then they can make amends, and then they can try to figure out who's really in charge. And so that was really painful. But there was no internet when I lost that job. That was 2006.
Lesley, let me just stop you for a minute. When you lost that job, did it come as a total surprise to you? You were prepared.
You're never prepared.
But you kind of saw the handwriting on the wall.
Yes. I mean, yeah, it was so obvious that it was really, it was pretty obvious. I had a boss. I mean, here's, again, you have 50-50 partnership. I would go to France. The French group would want to see me and talk to me and ask me all kinds of probing questions about the American company and about my boss, and was she doing them in and doing bad things to them and blah, blah, blah. And I would be like, no, what are you talking about? And then I would have my boss telling me, don't talk to them, don't see them, don't have lunch with them. And they would come to the hotel was around the corner from them. It's like, they come into my, like, what do I do? Say I'm not here? Like, how do, I mean, it was very obvious that there were problems.
So you lost your job, and how did you feel when you lost your job at that time?
The lucky part, I had kind of a miraculous kind of firing, because I had just landed that day, the day they decided to play. I mean, this was just, it's like bad management all the way around. The day that they pulled the plug and the news went out, the night before, we had just been announced that we were up for an Oscar in our business, which is called the National Magazine Awards. Women's magazines never even got nominated. It was always dominated by men's magazines. There's a whole issue there with that. We had gotten our first nomination for general excellence, which means not just one story, but the whole thing. The whole industry thought we were doing an amazing job. We were making money, whatever. But my company was saying, no, you got to go. So most people were calling me up, and the first question I got from most people calling me up going, WTF. I don't know if I can curse here.
You can.
They're going, what the fuck is that about? And I was like, hey, it's politics. But every story began despite being announced. So it was, look, it was one of those things that happens. And so I couldn't have gone out in a better way. And then my successor took it down the tubes right away. So it was totally fine. But it's hard when you lose anybody who loses something that they really love to do. And I was just so naive, Wendy. I was so naive. I used to run around, you're going to laugh, anybody who's here. I was such a good girl. I'm such a pleaser. You tell me to run left, I run left. You tell me to run right, I run right. I used to tell my boss, who was like a major cost cutter, that was how she made her that was what people knew her for. She would come in and slice everything down. She would even slice the sinew away, like, so all you had was bone with no meat on it. I used to tell her I would do this job even if you didn't pay me. Like, I look back and I'm like, what an idiot. But I was so young. I didn't know. I was telling her how I felt, and she took advantage of that.
Lesley, I know you've written, I know the things that we look back and we say, what
Don't
were we
ever say
thinking?
that. Don't ever say that. Even if you feel it, don't say it to your boss, because
Yeah.
they'll say, you know what? Let's cut your salary in half.
Yeah. Lesley, I know you wrote a little bit about how you felt when you lost that job, and it
Oh, yeah.
sounded to me like you were very down in the dumps
Oh,
despite
yeah.
yeah, maybe you could share a little bit about that and how you tried to get out of it.
Well, back then, there was no internet. There was no way of contacting your readers. Your readers had to send a letter to the magazine and hope someone forwarded it to you. You just disappeared. You literally just evaporated off the radar, and you went from being, center stage for a lot of things to invisibility. It was a very weird kind of thing, and I'm guessing, I don't know what it's like today, because today you have your own personal visibility, um, which is so different, where you can maintain your visibility and maintain who you are out there if you have a very visible job. But back then, it was like being exiled from Rome. I mean, it's like you're going to go off and they send you off into the hinterlands and no one hears from you again, or even knows what happens to you. I had people trying to track me down for some work we had done. We had raised money. We used to do a lot of charity funding by selling products that women made off the cover. And one of the stories I'd done, I'd gone to Cambodia. It was around 2000. I can't remember when it was, 2004, 2005, when the big tsunami hit. And I went to do the story about how they were pulling Cambodia back together. And it was mainly women. It was women who were pulling the country back together. And we went to Phuket and we told the story of these children being washed away by this big wave. And I mean, it was, kind of a totally devastating thing. And we gave all this money. Gwen Stefani was on the cover and she made a great t-shirt and we sold it. And we made something like $157,000, which I gave to a tiny little charity that I saw when I was there on the island of Phuket, that was taking all these children who were now, they were all orphans because their parents had been washed away. And this orphanage needed to like actually build something. Anyway, so they were trying to track me down to show me they built the thing. They took the money and they built it and they sent pictures of it. And somebody somewhere finally sent me this package, which had the pictures in it. And this woman wrote me a note and said, look what you did and blah, blah, blah. But that took like a year and a half for her to find me.
Yeah.
So you could get those things going, but it's really almost like being in exile. It's really, I think it's very different today, but
I think it
hard.
is, Lesley, if you're prepared, as
Yes.
prepared as you can be.
Yes.
But I also
Yes.
think that people who don't have a well-established personal brand, their
Yeah.
brand is so tied in with their job that they've had for 20 some
Yes.
years or whatever.
Yes.
And suddenly that's gone.
Yes.
And it's as if you've lost yourself.
You have.
And that I think is really tough
I think
to
that's
try
the
to
big
pick
fear.
up
Big fear.
the pieces. And that takes some time to do.
Well, even today, Wendy, don't you think that people, and I hear this, and I'm sure you hear this too, people who've had big jobs in corporate life and they want to leave, they know it's no longer a fit, it's not going where they want it to go. They're afraid. What they tell me is they're afraid, what do I do Monday morning when I don't know whether if I set my alarm clock or not? What do I wear? I don't put on a suit. What do I put on? I mean, now it's hilarious coming out of the pandemic where we're all forced to figure that out. But, in terms of who am I? And when I have to write on the form for my kids' school, what do I do? What do I say? I mean, all those identifiers, it's kind of like what men went through, and when you looked at Mad Men, the series, that's what men went through. And we bought into that, as women got into the workforce, I think our generation really was the first generation that took that and made work our identity.
Yeah.
And even if we were balancing homemaking, children, and family, we still took a big portion of us and made that our identity. And but there's no roadmap for that, to get rid of the identity, and how do you survive after, right?
Right. That's a really good point about how we didn't even realize it, but we were really emulating the model that men had set. But I think that what I found talking to a lot of people about how they've reinvented themselves is that, yes, there's that sort of desert space where you're neither here nor there, you're at odds with yourself. But what I found works, and maybe you've seen the same thing, Lesley, is almost fake it till you make it. That sometimes you just need to take those little steps forward. So
movement, yes,
is so important.
Totally.
And
totally.
And also sometimes just doing the simple things like paying your bills, doing just the daily things of life can help you get out over that hump, and maybe do a little volunteer work, things like that, to get you back into the mainstream. Have you found that?
Yes, you need to get moving. And again, in my podcast, which is called Reinvent Yourself, you can find it anywhere. I've interviewed over 150 women now, I think. And getting the movement going is one of the most important things, but also preparing and not putting your head in the ground, in the sand. Because we all get a lot of signs that maybe it's not working, but it's really hard to accept that. And a lot of us, shut out what we don't want to hear. And so when it comes, it can be a huge surprise. I mean, like for me, when they closed More Magazine, it was so obvious. For me, it was obvious from year 3. I was there 8 years. We didn't fit. We never fit. Meredith at that point was a mass market corporation. And we were high end, high education, high household income. We just never fit. And we were small. They wanted a big magazine. We never, ever fit. So when they finally, we finally said, this is not going to work anymore, I was not surprised. There were people on my staff who were still surprised. They whittled us down from 34, staffers to 24. How could you be surprised? And they were, laying off people by the dozens every 6 months. I think sometimes we don't want to see it because it's too painful. So you have to be really aware. You have to be really honest. I go around speaking about having a reinvention plan in your pocket, your back pocket, no matter who you are, what you do. I have those friends, I'm sure you do too, which is, I've been with this bank for 22 years and they love me, and, we're a family affair. And then I hear a month later, the family affair was bought by a corporation and they dumped everybody out and they moved it to Alaska. It's not about you a lot of times. And the only great thing about the pandemic and about all this change that's gone on is nobody's going to ask you anymore about if you lost a job, if you moved from a job. As long as you can talk about what positive you've made of it, found of it, made happen, I don't think anybody cares anymore. I just think we're in a different place. Here's a question coming in saying, how about for the people who just want to make a change? How does one just leave a job successfully and find something different? Do you lose your power being unemployed? I mean, I would say the big lesson that I know for that is never try to never, that is, because then you are super vulnerable, because any HR department will take full advantage of the fact that you don't have a job. They shouldn't, but they will. So if you can hold your breath, segue into the next thing, that's a great thing to do. Also, somebody who I was just speaking to in one of the podcasts had a really great point, which she said is, don't jump out there. If you can build yourself, when I say have a plan, it means having another idea you've worked with, maybe on the weekends, or you have a side hustle, you do freelance this, or you teach something separately. So you have a little bit of segue. So it gives you something that you could write, in that little thing when they say, who are you and what do you do? You could have that. And it also gives you some time to think, because I don't know if you've seen this, Wendy, but I have. The people who, grab the next thing that's coming up, and then they're out again in a year. And it becomes a cycle. It's like that. It's like leaving a long-term boyfriend. It's like you grab the next guy and you're just filling a spot, and it's not right either. You need that time where you can actually think and decide what it is you want, and then go for that in the next one.
I really like what you said, Lesley, about having a reinvention plan. And one thing that I found, and I'm sure you have too, is so helpful, is to develop your personal brand. And by that,
yes.
I mean really having an area of expertise that people recognize you as.
Yeah.
And that does so much. I know there's one person I know who's an author and a coach, and he was having some bad times. He got COVID and all of that, but he had a robust personal brand. So as a result of that, he really didn't lose a lot. And he was quickly, when he got better, quickly able to rebuild. And that can carry you, even if you lose your job. If you have that robust personal brand, that can make it so much easier to get you to another job, so that you can't make your job your identity, your achievements, what's special about you. That has to be what you're about, not who you work for.
See, that's the hard part, Wendy, I think, for this generation. The hard part for this generation is we didn't think about building our personal brand. We went in because we're really the second generation of working women, right? So full-time working women, maybe first full-time. And so we went in and gave it our all, right? And so this idea that you should now think about yourself as an independent contractor, which is really what the millennials are about, which is what rubs a lot of us the wrong way, which is like, what do you mean you're like all out for yourself? But they, in a way, are smarter about corporate life than we were, because they see it better. They see what happened to their parents. They see how corporate life, look, everybody can have a wonderful corporate career. I loved where I worked. I loved everything I did. I made tons of money at it. I did things I would never have been able to do. But in the end, it's about money and what they can get away with and what they can do. That is efficiencies. It's money. There's no sentiment there. They can love you and toss you out tomorrow, like, here's your parachute. It's lined with diamonds. Goodbye, and it's not about you. But so in many ways, I think the millennials and Z saw what happened to a lot of us who gave ourselves to these corporations and were horribly disappointed when downsizing came, when, these companies gobbled each other up and had to, get rid of 25 management people. So they're smarter. They've maybe gone too far in that they never really, a lot of them just don't ever hook in, but they're smarter in that they're building their personal brand from day one. And corporation be damned, that's the other side of it. But if you can, as you are now, one of the ways that you can do that is we all have personal visibility out on social media, no matter how much we hate it. You can, and it does take some work, because it's its own animal. learning to build your own personal brand. We do a lot of that. We have recordings, we have stories, we have articles on Covey Club, all about that. It is its own animal. It's very awkward for people who are lawyers or who are, professionals within something to think of themselves as an individual. But it is what you need to do. And if you can do it while you are in corporate, if you can run your personal brand alongside your corporate person, that's the win. And I was lucky enough that when more was shaky, and I knew it was shaky, the internet was going crazy. I ran the internet site at the same time. And so I was like, okay. And at that point, you were actually playing off your personal brand off the magazine brand. So I was able to play both off each other, grow both. And then when the big bang came, I went off with my group. And I wasn't invisible. I was no longer in exile. And it was just a totally, absolutely different transition. But my eyes were so wide open that my friends actually got tired of hearing me say, they're going to close this, they're going to close this. They were like, 8 years later. I was like, yes, 8 years later. They did. It was like, yeah, but you've been saying this for 5 years. I'm like, well, okay, but they did, so I was right. I told you I was right. So, but you do have to be really, really, honest with yourself about where these things, corporate life is tough. And they love you until they don't love you tomorrow. We hear that all the time. I mean, how many of your friends, oh, they love me, and then they fire you tomorrow. Yeah. They may love you, but it has nothing to do with it. You can't look for love there,
Right. Yeah. And Lesley, maybe you could talk a little bit about how you founded Covey Club, how you got from leaving Moore and then starting a new business and becoming an entrepreneur.
Right. Well, because I'd had the experience of being invisible and exiled when Mary Claire pushed me out, I said, I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to leave myself open like that. And I was like a puppy dog. You have no idea. I was like a puppy dog. Anything they said, anything they wanted, I did. I mean, I was a fool for love, let's say. So, when I was lucky that Moore had such a robust social media presence and a website and all that stuff, and that I was able to run it and learn about it. And I was also lucky that social media was really coming in at that time, and you were able to play both off each other. So literally the day that the magazine closed, I had tons of readers. They knew where to find me. They knew my name. I mean, already most people, I don't know if it's true in corporate life everywhere, but in a lot of businesses, you are, your handles are all out there for you. They want you to be part of the brand. And so the day they closed the magazine, people came to my social media and said, what the heck? Do something else for us. And I had 600, I didn't know what I was doing. I've never been an entrepreneur. I was actually at Columbia getting my master's degree in sustainability. I thought I was going to segue over into sustainability in the beauty business. And I was like, okay, you want something else? I know this area. I don't know anything but print magazines and websites. I'll try something. What do you want? And so I made them a survey. I'm a really good researcher. And you'll laugh. Anybody who's done any kind of research knows, today you can't get somebody to answer 4 questions. Like, that's a lot. I did 54 questions. And 627 people took it all the way to the end. I took what they said. I mapped it out. I like making maps and things like that. I made a mind map of what they wanted. I started reading some books about entrepreneurship because I thought, okay, maybe I'm going to try this. I mean, there were a lot. We covered entrepreneurs a lot at Moore. I was very lucky. No one was talking about older entrepreneurs. You had to be 22 years old to be an entrepreneur. And I was finding all these amazing women who were starting incredible things. So I was like, okay, I've got the Columbia degree I'm still working on. That's 2 more years. Maybe I can start this as I go. And I started reading, the lean startup books. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll take my severance pay. And I told my husband, I'm going to take my severance pay and I'm going to try it. I'm going to put the severance towards this and see what happens. I could lose it all. I don't know what I'm doing. And I came up with the name Covey because I wanted something small and intimate. When you do magazines, you're trying to build a community. That's kind of what we were doing, though. Looking back, it's kind of laughable because there really was no interaction with them. It was very minimal. It was very one way. We were, they would send us a letter, we would publish a thing, and through letters, we would hear from our readers. I mean, it's kind of hilarious now when you think about how intimate it is. But it was community building. And so I said, how do you build that same community but make it come alive? Like, what if you took the more readership and actually had interaction, and you get together and you're supporting each other and make it a real community? Covey was a small group of birds. I wanted it to be small and intimate. There were a lot of big events going on at the time. This is 4 years ago. The women's conferences, Texas, Massachusetts, 7,000 women show up. You sit down, you look at a video screen like this, and the person is that big, 10 miles away from you. And, you don't really meet anybody or do anything there. You go and spend a day and listen to things. And I was like, I want to do something that's more meaningful than that. And that's how Covey was born. And so I was looking for small groups of animals. So there was a murder of crows. People said they didn't think the murder club would be good. So I thought it would be funny. I have a good sense of humor, but nobody thought that. It was supposed to be bitches and badasses was another one. But my friends who were in marketing, they were like, you'll never get a sponsor with that. I was like, oh, really? I like bitches and badasses. Okay. And so we came up with Covey because it gave the idea of it's a small group of birds that get together, and there's a nest, and then we've made it part of our imagery. And I happen to love birds. I used to write stories to my little parakeet, so it kind of all works from there.
No, that's a great story that you really built the business from the ground up, based on what people wanted, which is really the best way to build a business. I see that we have another question here. Is there a point in a reinvention plan that age matters? What and where are the opportunities for women over 50?
Well, guess what the average age of reinvention? Now, this was before the pandemic. So what was the average age of the true entrepreneurs before the pandemic? I don't know what the number is after. Do you know?
I know that older people are overrepresented as entrepreneurs. People think typically that it's the young people that are the entrepreneurs, when in fact it's the
39.
older people.
39 average age.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see after the pandemic if that goes up. And what you have as you're older, for whatever reason, the image is Shark Tank, 25-year-old kids. But that is not the reality. And what you find is that when you're older, you have a network, you have contacts, you have confidence, you have experience, you may have some money you can invest. You already have all these things that, when you're 20, you don't know how to leverage anything or where to find anything. It's just our youth obsessed culture that says, the only ones we want to talk about are, 20-year-olds who have a new dating app that they want to do. And in actuality, that's not who is actually doing the entrepreneurship there. And I'll tell you, I was able to leapfrog over a lot of people because I have a network already. I had my, I had people I could talk to. I had people who were already successful in different areas. Like if I need marketing help, I know people who know marketing. I don't have to, and it's not like somebody who might know marketing because they've worked somewhere for a year and maybe they have, a little bit of knowledge. I know people who are like, I got a problem. I go to somebody who's run Martha Stewart. It's like, that's totally different. Those are the things that we have that the young people don't have. Do we have, the cute little personas that, perpetuate the myth of, American youth? No, maybe not. But at this point in my life, that's not the most important thing. And I think, if you can sell yourself as experienced, you have the network, you may even have people you can fundraise from. I think you have a lot of advantages by being older. Also, you know how to rebound, and you're realistic. You're not pie in the sky. You know how to manage. You know all these different things that you have to learn. And remember that getting up off the ground after you've been knocked down, as we all know, that's the real test. The real test in business is not when everything is going right. It's when you've lost a job, when you've been demoted, when how do you respond? And there are so many people who just get off a playing field. They find an excuse and they get off the playing field. And it's tougher and harder to get back on. And once you've done that, I think those are the people that you invest in, because they're not going to be thrown. And when you're an entrepreneur, oh my God, I mean, I think Covey Club was done every 6 months. I would see something happen. I'd be like, oh my God, is that the end of it? And then I'd go, I've been through this before. And I remember every time for 40 years when I had to put somebody on a cover of a magazine, and we'd have these hysteria moments of somebody pulled out at the last minute and what we're going to do and how are we going to find somebody. And I remember looking back going, you never once had to put yourself on the cover. So it always works out, like as hysterical as it can be. And in those days, you were talking about who was on the cover meant how much money you were going to make, right? And as you went down the ranks of somebody nobody knew, you were going to make less and less money and your bosses were going to be mad and all that stuff. But you never got so low that you had to take a picture of the person across the street and stick it on the cover. Something always happened. And so you have that confidence that comes with being there, doing it. You know you can get out of it. And that you need that for an entrepreneur,
I think it's you've been extremely resilient and
resilience. That's the right word.
In your career. I don't want to completely. I think that you're an exceptional person, Lesley, in terms of all your accomplishments. I do know that, and I know you've probably experienced it too, ageism is real.
Totally. It's real.
Especially for women. Women have it harder, unfortunately, than men.
Yes, they do.
And that's something that we just can't get away from, which is one reason why starting your own business, being an entrepreneur, is such a good thing to do, because it gives you don't have to be selling yourself to these millennials or the people interviewing you.
Right.
You can be out there, and some of these millennials may be your clients, but you have a much more control and agency over yourself.
Oh, yeah. The ageism is there, Wendy. I'm not meaning to say it's not in any way. We did a big study, actually, with Know Your Value, Mika Brzezinski's group, because when I started Covey, I started hearing these stories about such bad corporate ageism that friends of mine who are very accomplished, were being forced out in their 50s of all kinds of businesses, everything. And they were becoming unwilling entrepreneurs. I mean, there were people like me. I was really excited about trying my hand at it, but it's not for everybody. It's tough, and, but they had no other choice. They had kids to put through college. And so they were like forced to be entrepreneurs. So there was no research about why women 50 plus were feeling like they were being pushed out. And was this true? Was it not? I usually go and look for research and say, is this true? Or do we just feel this way? Or is it worse in this sector and not that sector? Or what about men? Do they have the same problem? So we actually did some research with NBC, and we actually discovered that, yes, the women are being forced out, so are men, but men are being pulled back in more than women. And the really interesting thing, that the surprising part of the study, really surprising, because they studied everything. They wanted, for contrast, you study the men and you study all age groups. The over 50 and the under the 20-somethings both experience equal amounts of ageism.
Yeah.
They experience it as, you're too young, you're too stupid, you know nothing.
Yeah.
And the older women, you're too old, you know nothing about the way the world is today. And I said, Well, that's the good news, because usually these two are like this. Why not form an alliance and say, hey, if we're both are misconceptions, right? They're both stereotypes, they're both misconceptions. Isn't it better to form an alliance on either end of the age problem than to, to fight each other? Because I think that's a bridge, if you, and it's the opposite sides of the same coin.
Yes. So have you been able to do that, have that intergenerational bridge?
I talk about it a lot, and we have people who come into Covey who are much younger because they want to learn about things. I'll run stories by younger women when they're talking about their mothers or talking about how things that happened in their mothers' careers affected them. There was one wonderful story. A girlfriend just read it the other day. She said she was very moved by it. A young woman invented something like Covey for her mother, who she felt her mother was being isolated as she got older and was losing friends, which is what happens too as you get older, and the kids go away and the PTA goes away and all that, and you may be like, oh, got like 5 friends, and where am I going to meet new people, and not people who are just the same as what I'd met before. So we try to look in all directions, and part of my reinvention was moving down to New Orleans, was leaving the New York area. And one of the reasons why we chose New Orleans is because there is no age segregation here. Everybody, you're all mixed up. You have older people and younger people at everything. It's not like some places when you go, if you went to a concert somewhere, it would only be young people and you'd be the odd man out.
Yeah.
It's not like that here. It's very age agnostic. It's more interest. It's by interest, like what is your specific interest? And people of all stripes show up. And you have to find those things that cut against the grain. And you have to, push it yourself. You have to be sure that you're going to push it yourself. But the ageism is real. It's happening. And I just saw a study that I wrote about where they didn't give the clarity as to why, but women are, when it comes to ageism, it is more about personal. They look at us personally more than the men. It's about how we look, how we present ourselves. There's much more criticism for us than it is for men. They didn't undercut the why. But
I think that's true. I think that's true, though, at any age, unfortunately. That women are evaluated much more so than men based on their looks, how they present.
Sure.
I see that we could I could talk all day with you, Lesley.
Yes,
I don't think people are going to want to stay, but I want to, before we close, and you've been a terrific guest. Thank you so much. A few little announcements. One is I'm going to give everybody who watches this now or watches it afterwards a free tip sheet on your elevator pitch, which is such an important part of creating your personal brand, how you can quickly talk about yourself in 20 to 30 seconds. So email me. I'll put my email in the chat. I'll also say it here. It's Wendy at Thriving and it's Thriving AT 50 numeral 50 plus plus.com. Wendy at thriving at 50plus.com. I'm going to have another special guest June 10th that I'd love you to tune in for. I'm going to have Beverly Jones, who's an amazing career coach, has written several books, is an expert on helping you be more happy at work, being more resilient, and I know you'll enjoy her. So it's 3 p.m. Thursday, June 10th. And I'm going to put in the chat before I sign off, I'll put my information. And Lesley, thank you so much. I've
great to be here.
Loved talking with you.
Thank you. Yes. And come join us at Covey Club too.
What do you think? And I'm going to end with my slogan for renewal at 50 plus. It's always moving forward, never stuck in place.
Mm-hmm.
So move forward, and bye to everybody. And thank you again, Lesley.
Bye. Thank you, Wendy. Take care.
You too.